Hey, how you doing? This is Adam Post, publisher of more than 1,000 comic books and marketing expert covering woke media panic as FCC does crackdown on fake news. President Trump's FCC chairman, Brendan Carr, has launched an aggressive campaign against major media companies. He's investigating CBS, PBS, NPR, and Comcast over diversity policies and alleged news distortion. Because if you're going to maintain a federal license to transmit the news over federally owned airwaves, there are some standards, and it's about time they lived up to them. The most high-profile case involves CBS's 60 Minutes interview with Kamala Harris. Carr demanded unedited transcripts, delaying CBS's merger with Skydance in the process. Critics say it's a blatant attempt to pressure media companies into compliance. Compliance with standards of the FCC. And yeah, this can be a gray area and it can be a problem, but we know the media is a problem and it does need some regulation. The FCC is now shifting from proving wrongdoing to forcing media outlets to defend their editorial choices. The investigation into DEI policies at Comcast and NBC Universal has raised further concerns. Many see it as an effort to dismantle corporate diversity initiatives under the guise of regulation. Well, how can you get a federal license to operate federal assets, federal airwaves, and at the same time illegally discriminate against people? There should be a certain minimum standard of following the law. And yeah, they've been getting away with it for years now, but it's time for them to cut it out. Brendan Carr has a history of pushing conservative viewpoints. Under Biden, he aligned with right-wing media outlets to attack woke corporations and tech censorship. The FCC's crackdown is part of a broader effort by Trump's administration to intimidate the press, to get the woke media in line. Other networks fear they could be next in line for scrutiny. CBS's willingness to comply has sparked debate over journalistic integrity. Many argue that giving in to government pressure sets a dangerous precedent, which of course the previous administration, through the White House even, was pressuring social media companies, we've heard all of that reporting, to allow certain messages but not other messages, and to stress other messages, and even had a list of people they created that they claim were putting out misinformation that should be blocked in social media and mass media. The new administration did not invent asking the media to hold up to certain standards. Brendan Carr's critics include former Republican FCC Chair Al Sykes, who warned of government censorship. Yet, Mr. Sykes didn't apparently have anything to say when the prior administration was directly doing government censorship, not just potentially leading to government censorship. Go figure that one out. The media industry is in turmoil, with executives weighing whether to fight or submit. Many are making concessions, settling lawsuits, or altering policies to avoid Trump's wrath. Brendan Carr has hinted that more actions against the press are coming. His latest statement on Twitter summed it up ominously, quote, "a good start." And from Deadline, Donald Trump and the FCC chairman are waging war on the news media, as much of the industry frets over whether to fight back. Of course, one great way to fight back would be, instead of making everything their own opinion and trying to undermine the government, they could just say, this is the news, and then this is our opinion. But when they have their anchors doing opinion, and they don't label that as opinion, then that's really the fundamental problem. They'd have no problem with the FCC if they couch their editorial choices and their editorial views as opinion and not the news. And that's what they're fighting to try to protect. The misrepresentation of opinion as actual facts. In the blizzard of executive orders, resolute desk pronouncements, and mass firings of President Donald Trump's first weeks in office, it's easy to lose sight of what's been happening at the FCC and its chilling effect on the media. The agency typically gets few headlines, engaged as it is in policy calls over arcane topics like spectrum allocation. But as the chief regulator with oversight over broadcasting, the FCC wields authority over media companies large and small, and that's where its Trump-appointed chairman, Brendan Carr, has sought to rattle the industry in his initial month. Just this past week, Carr announced an investigation into the diversity, equity, and inclusion policies of Comcast and NBC Universal, and vowed that other media companies would face the same scrutiny. He targeted PBS and NPR for their underwriting practices. meaning how they took money from advertising that they're not supposed to take because they're being funded differently, they're being funded through the government, while warning that their government funding would be in the crosshairs of congressional Republicans. He launched an inquiry into KCBS-AM radio station's coverage of a San Jose immigration raid, stepping into a story at the heart of Trump's agenda, because they gave out information at that radio station of ICE activity in the area. They leaked it. That's federal law enforcement activity. They're not supposed to be doing that. They put everyone's lives in danger when they do that. The targets of the investigations, the officers working on that arrest, as well as innocent people, just bystanders that could be caught in some kind of crossfire. Why would the federal government be giving an endorsement to a radio station doing something like that, endangering people's lives, when they're abusing their power just to strike back at the administration? To give the license to maintain the federal license is to endorse their activity. Most prominently, Carr has gone after CBS, demanding that journalistic powerhouse 60 Minutes produce an unedited transcript of their interview with Kamala Harris, which they then did do. They also produced the video. Carr's inquiry was based on a complaint filed by a conservative group claiming a violation of the FCC's news distortion policy. Trump's lawsuit over CBS and 60 Minutes is based on Texas law for deceptive practices. When the network produced the transcript showing that its editing was not out of the industry norm, although a lot of people say it was, Carr didn't dismiss the complaint, but sent it off for public comment, delaying any resolution until well into March at the earliest. Carr's actions are in line with the Trump administration's overall effort to threaten or punish the press, the fake news, at a time when major media outlets are in a period of upheaval. In the case of CBS, the network's parent company is seeking FCC approval for its acquisition by Skydance, and Carr has made clear that the 60 Minutes complaint likely would be part of the merger review. Paramount and CBS also have several lawsuits against them for over-the-top, ridiculous DEI discrimination. I've covered at least 3 of those lawsuits so far. Just people straight up told they're not going to get the job that they're pursuing because of their skin color. Again, I don't see how the federal government is going to endorse something like that and not at least force them to settle those lawsuits before they're allowed to have this merger. Because you need to transfer licenses to whatever the new entity is or whatever their mechanism is that the FCC is approving this merger. So they should take action. And that has nothing to do with DOJ making their own comments from an antitrust standpoint or from a civil rights standpoint. The news distortion policy is a rarely enforced provision that subjects broadcasters to punishment only, quote, if it can be proven that they've deliberately distorted a factual news report. But the FCC has long said its authority is narrow, noting that the agency is prohibited from engaging in censorship or infringing on the First Amendment. Quote, it is unusual for any news distortion complaint to get this far, particularly when it involves a simple editing choice, according to Robert Korn Revere, former chief counsel to the FCC and a longtime First Amendment litigator. So he's operating on the other side if he's litigating on behalf of the First Amendment. Quote, I don't know of any case that rivals this in terms of the weakness of the claim, said Korn Revere, who is now with the group Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression. Carr's decision to pursue this complaint also is in contrast to the pushback during Trump's first term. In 2017, when the president suggested that NBC should lose its license over some of its news content, then FCC Chair Ajit Pai made clear that the agency, quote, under the law, does not have the authority to revoke the license of a broadcast station based on the content of a particular newscast. Carr himself affirmed this view when 2 House Democrats, following the January 6th attack on the Capitol, asked distributors about their decisions to continue carrying Fox News, One America Newswork, and Newsmax. At the time, Carr said, a newsroom's decision about what stories to cover and how to frame them should be beyond the reach of any government official not targeted by them. Carr's also spoken up before when it comes to specific attacks on the media, even from those who are now Trump allies. In 2022, when Elon Musk suspended the Twitter accounts of journalists, Carr told Deadline that although he wasn't aware of the specifics, one person should not get to decide who participates in the digital town square. Tom Wheeler, who served as FCC chairman during Barack Obama's second term, said that in the Trump era, Carr's strategy seems to be attack, 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 keep media outlets on their back foot. That's a pretty easy one to figure out because that is the new administration's take on everything when it comes to their opposition. They will not be on defense. They will be on attack. in every possible category. And so far, it seems to be working. It's hard to be on the offense when you're always on the defense. Tom Wheeler noted that Carr's initiation of investigations are being done by him alone, not the full commission, and that in his missives to media outlets, quote, the verdict is being delivered in the letter. The paradigm has shifted from the FCC having to prove allegations to the FCC making allegations and having CBS having to prove they're wrong, according to Wheeler. Some have written off some of the criticism of Carr as the alarmism of the center-left media. But the chorus of voices who have sounded warnings includes the editorial page of the Wall Street Journal and a former Republican chair of the FCC. Carr, quote, has decided to put the commission in the business of news censorship, according to Al Sykes, FCC chair under President George Bush. Quote, his actions are akin to becoming a campaign aide to the president, adding that Carr's demand for the CBS transcripts showed that he wants to be the ultimate editor. In contrast to some of the fiery figures elsewhere in the Trump administration, led by the president himself, Carr in person is genial, a bit of a contrast to what you'd expect given the swagger on his social media feed. He's a longtime veteran of the FCC, having joined the agency's staff in 2012 after working as a private appellate and litigation attorney. He rose to the position of general counsel at the agency before Trump nominated him to fill a vacancy on the commission in 2017. Quote, I like Brendan, Wheeler said. He's incredibly smart. He is strategically a genius, and he's willing to take risks. I think that we're seeing that play out. Carr also has been very ambitious. During the Biden administration, as he was in the minority on the commission, he made a name for himself as a social media voice, arguing that tech platforms were stifling conservative voices, which of course they were. He appeared not just on business shows, but on Newsmax, aligning with the argument of Trump and his allies. He also seems to relish all the furor over his attacks on the media. Quote, find a job you love, and you will never have to work a day in your life, he wrote on Twitter, responding to a story in the Daily Beast. Even before Trump, just after the election appointed him chairman, Carr was attacking media bias. He accused NBC of trying to influence the vote by featuring Kamala Harris on Saturday Night Live, claiming they were trying to evade the FCC's equal time rule because they did not offer the same opportunity to Donald Trump. The next day, the network gave Trump time on its sports programming, and his campaign never really complained about it. But Carr has pressed ahead. Soon after the inauguration, he revived a complaint against NBC over the Harris appearance. He also restored a complaint against ABC over the way that their moderators conducted the September presidential debate between Trump and Harris, because Trump was fact-checked and Harris was not fact-checked, even though, per the terms of the debate, there was not supposed to be this kind of fact-checking for either of the candidates. Carr's predecessor, Jessica Rosenworcel, had dismissed those complaints in addition to the one against 60 Minutes. She warned that the FCC should not be the president's speech police. Well then, who is going to be the president's speech police? I don't know. If news distortion is really something that the FCC is supposed to prevent, then let's have them prevent it. And let's base it on facts, not opinions. Carr has acknowledged the agency's limits. In an interview with CNBC in December, Carr said that at the end of the day, obviously there's a statutory provision that prevents the FCC from engaging in censorship. I don't want to be the speech police. But he also rattled the saber, suggesting that broadcast licenses were not sacred cows, while floating the idea of an FCC rulemaking to determine what the FCC's public interest standard, an ingredient for the license holders to meet, actually means. Carr has suggested that there's a role for the FCC in addressing the low trust in the national news media versus local outlets, something he made clear in a letter to Disney over the power of the company to extract onerous concessions in local affiliate negotiations. And that was a story that we covered, where Disney was demanding that its local affiliates pay a higher and higher percentage of cable rebroadcast rights for ABC programming. The point basically being, ABC, to raise extra cash, has been pressuring these independent stations to pay more and more money to them that they were getting in licensing fees from local cable companies, essentially potentially abusing their leverage. And the problem got so extreme that in some cases, according to Carr, some of these independent stations are being forced and asked by ABC if they want to keep their ABC status as an ABC station to pay more money to ABC than they actually get from the cable companies to rebroadcast the ABC network. Or it's not my decision to hold broadcasters to a public interest obligation, Carr told CNBC. It's Congress, and if they don't like that, then they should go to Congress to change the law. But it's my job at the FCC to enforce the laws passed by Congress, and that's what I intend to do. There is one thing that can stop Carr's efforts: the courts. But challenging the FCC takes a willingness on the part of CBS or any of these other outlets to sue the FCC, which could work out very badly for them because they need the FCC's approval. The National Association of Broadcasters has spoken out on some of Trump's attacks on the media. In October, President and CEO Curtis Legate said, quote, "The threat from any politician to revoke a broadcast license simply because they disagree with the station's content undermines this basic freedom. But many in the industry are looking at the Trump administration to have a more lenient attitude towards mergers and acquisitions, more specifically the relaxation or even repeal of the FCC's media ownership rules. What lobbyists didn't expect, however, is the level of sheer ingratiation needed. On their own, media companies have taken steps already to try to appease Trump. ABC settled a Trump defamation lawsuit for $16 million. Amazon purchased a Melania Trump documentary for a reported $40 million. With the merger of CBS parent Paramount Global and Skydance pending, sources say there have been talks with Trump's team on settling another part of the 60 Minutes brouhaha, the president's $20 billion lawsuit. Originally it was $10 billion. Now it's $20 billion after the release of the actual interview with Kamala Harris on 60 Minutes, arguing that the 60 Minutes edit was so egregious that it interfered with the election, even though Trump won it, and it cost his social media platform Truth Social web traffic, resulting in a financial loss for Truth Social. Wall Street isn't sure what to make of Carr, but generally does believe that the Paramount Skydance deal will eventually be approved. If the media simply separated their opinion from their news reporting, they would not have any of these problems. Let me know what you think of all this in the comments below. Always love to see your ideas. Please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications, give me a thumbs up, and I'll see you again soon with another story. And if I don't see you, I will miss you.